Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of AI and the Future of Law. I'm your co host, Jen Leonard, founder of Creative Lawyers, joined as always by the wonderful Bridget McCormack, president and CEO of the American Arbitration Association. On this podcast, we explore all aspects of the fascinating world of artificial intelligence and its impacts and the opportunities and challenges it creates in the realm of law. And today we are thrilled to be joined by two entrepreneurs, innovators, and advocates for using artificial intelligence to attack the civil justice crisis, Sateesh Nori and Tom Martin. And before we dive into our fascinating conversation with Sateesh and Tom, we just wanted to provide a little bit of background on each of them. Sateesh Nori is a lawyer, an author, and former law professor. He is senior legal innovation strategist at Just Tech. And for 20 years, he represented tenants across New York City at various legal services organizations. He was a commissioner at the 2019 Charter Reform Commission, and he's currently a member of the ABA Commission on Homelessness and Poverty. He is a graduate of Johns Hopkins University and of NYU School of Law. He authors a Substack called The Augmented Lawyer, and he's also the author of a book called Sheltered 20 Years in Housing Court. And you can check him out in a TEDx talk he gave called How a Chatbot Can Stop Homelessness. And today he's also joined by his frequent collaborator and innovator, Tom Martin, who is the CEO and founder of LawDroid, a generative AI legal tech company. Tom is also the principal of Deep Legal, a legal AI transformation consultancy. And Tom is helping shape the minds of future lawyers and his role as an adjunct professor at Suffolk University Law School, where he's teaching generative AI. Tom's also authored Generative AI and the Delivery of Legal Services, a textbook adopted by law schools nationwide. Tom's an ABA legal rebel and Fast Case 50 honoree, and he also serves on the ABA Center for Innovation Governing Council. And he's launched Law Answers AI and Depositron to expand access to justice. And we're going to talk with Tom and Sateesh about all of these innovations and more as we dive into our conversation today. So, welcome to our guests, and we're excited to dive in.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, we start every one of our podcast episodes with a segment we call AI Ahas. And we hear from many people that this helps them think about how they might use AI in their own lives. And this is just an opportunity to hear from you in a fun way how you've been using AI in your professional or personal life to do something you think is particularly interesting, fun, magical, quirky. So Satish, I'm going to bring it to you to kick us off. What is your AI aha you'd like to share?
Yeah, this one is a little bit embarrassing. I use AI for a lot of work stuff, and I use it for social media posts and, helping me with Substack articles and so on. But recently was my wife's birthday, and I couldn't think of a gift. So I asked ChatGPT, this is a little bit about her. Can you give me 10 gift ideas? And here's my budget. And it gave me 10, and I picked one of them, and hopefully she won't listen to this podcast or remember uh, what I got her and put it all together. So it's slightly embarrassing, but it did give me this creative outlet when I was blocked. Like, what do you get somebody for a big birthday? And it served its purpose really, really well.
Were you impressed with the output?
Yeah, it was very specific. I even, entered my location, New York City, and it gave me like places where I could get stuff. And it could be very specific as to her interests and within my budget and all that stuff. So it was so helpful. And the output came out within seconds. And obviously, I waited till the last minute. So it was very, very useful.
I did this for a friend once, and one thing I did not think about was the physical dimensions of the gift I got her. So she's a writer, and ChatGPT helped me come up with. She also likes antiques, and it suggested I get her this typewriter, this antique
Oh,
typewriter And then it arrived and it was like 200 pounds. Her husband was like, "Thanks a lot. It's her favorite gift she ever got. We have nowhere to put it." So I guess the AI will have to get better at thinking about
Or just
space and
prompt it for a weight limit.
yeah, exactly. I need to get better. That's a great one. Thank you for sharing, Satish. Tom, what is your AI aha?
I was thinking for a while because there's been a few, but I think one that stands out that was really helpful is that I had the, good fortune to be redoing the backyard of our house in Los Angeles that we have. And the idea came up to put in a small fountain, right? Like not huge, nothing, park or something, just a small one. And I I was dumbfounded about how it would look, like what the dimensions would be like. Like that always throws me because I'm based in Vancouver. So normally you go in the backyard, you look at it and you kind of like take the dimensions and you can figure out what it would look like. But because I'm in Vancouver, to visualize that in LA, I wasn't going to be flying out to LA for every like different fountain idea. So what I did is got a few pictures of the fountain. I already had the picture in my backyard, and I basically asked ChatGPT to place the fountain in the corner of the yard, and it perfectly like melded it into the picture of the backyard, and it gave me that visual where I could decide amongst all of these different ones which one like felt like it should be there, you know? And it wasn't perfect, like it got the dimensions slightly off for some of them, but it was a huge win for me, like to be able to pick the right one that made the right sense and really felt like part of our family.
That's great. I've been trying to do that a little bit too with just thinking about how to make my office, a little bit more user friendly, but also because it's in the main floor of our house and people see it, I want it to kind of, not look like a big messy office. And I've found that to be quite helpful. I give it the dimensions, I tell it what I need. I tell it what else is gonna probably be stuff in the room because I can't get the big piano out of there. And it's given me like a bunch of ideas, and so that's it. It's another like way to use it in regular life, that just really opens up possibilities. Is the fountain now installed, Tom? Do we have the fountain in the yard?
We do, and it's really cute and has these couple little doves like on it, and yeah, my daughters love it.
That's cool. Well, it's great to have you both here. I feel like Satish, you and I are like our lives are intersecting more and more in all these different ways and projects, and that's going to be really fun. And Tom, I want to find more ways for my life to intersect with yours as well. But it's wonderful to get an opportunity to talk to you both, especially about some of the things you've collaborated on. But before that, let me start with a question to you, Satish. You spent many years, 2 decades working in housing law and in direct services, the sort of one-to-one service model that, we lawyers, almost all of us, practice. I also started my career, at Legal Aid in New York, and also went to NYU Law School. Um, but, what G the we don't see many people from that background jumping into technology. You're a lot younger than I am, but when I went to legal aid, we had paper file folders. There was, like, I think, a computer on one floor that you could, sign up to use for word processing, sometimes, but, we weren't leading in legal technology. What makes you so excited about the possibilities AI creates given your background and the kind of legal problems you've been looking at and thinking about and working on for so long?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think about this all the time. What am I doing here? How did I get here? And one way is to start at the beginning. And the reason I went to law school is to try to help people, to find solutions to people's everyday problems. And I really enjoyed the challenge of doing that. But also, I was moved by the unfairness of the way our world works. We have laws on the books, but people can't access them. We have courts, but people don't have lawyers to go to them. We have, all of these protections, but people are trapped and they're taken advantage of. And so when I started that starting point, the law is just a vehicle. Like I happen to be a lawyer. Maybe I could have been a school teacher or a plumber or a bridge builder, like whatever it is. This is just what I happen to do because I liked public speaking. I was on the debate team. Like it just seemed like a natural path for me to follow to go into the law. And working at Legal Aid, it was really rewarding to be able to work with so many people and understand their lives, try to better understand my own city, the world I lived in. But eventually I realized, wait a minute, like we aren't doing a great job here. We're turning away a lot of people every single day. We have a really narrow set of parameters about which we can help people. We have grants and funders and limitations. Like this is not the best way to deliver help like this. And so I was attracted to technology. Like in the early days, it was like a Palm Pilot or like being able to have email in court. 15 years ago, I thought this is a great way to get information that I need when I need it. And then during the pandemic, I thought like there's got to be more to life than just being a lawyer in a big legal aid organization. Like what else is there? How can I think about this problem differently? And that's when I kind of came across AI tools and a RAG bot. And when I saw a demo of a RAG bot by our good friend Sam Flynn, um, I felt like I was hit by lightning. I thought, this is it. There's no more need for people like me to struggle to transform or transmit the complicated rules and laws to ordinary people. It's not necessary anymore. We can do a lot more with less, and we can free up the resources to do harder things. And so that's what brought me here. It's really trying to solve the problem, trying to find solutions. And I think the challenge now is to convince more and more people like this is a really, viable, effective, efficient path forward. And let's stop sitting on our hands and let's take steps forward together. It's doable.
Yeah, it's all of a sudden the ability to scale the kind of work and help you were giving, each individual client, right? It enables uh, a new model is how I'm thinking about it. And before we move on to a next question, maybe all of our listeners know what a ragbot is. I have built a lot of ragbots with Sam and without Sam. I know you have as well. But tell the listeners what a ragbot is.
Yeah, maybe Tom, I'll turn it over to you. You're better able to explain.
Yeah, so RAG is shorthand for retrieval augmented generation, which is a terrible term they came up with. But it just means that you can connect a chat interface, like a chatbot, to a source of intelligence, a source of knowledge. So a bunch of documents that you have, or just your own experience that you've written down. And then that chatbot can refer to that information and intelligently answer questions.
That was well done in plain English. I like it. Yeah.
I like the source of intelligence. I'm gonna borrow that, Tom, with your permission. Um, Satish, could I ask one follow-up to, going back to your origin story because it resonates with me in the reasons I became a lawyer and so many students I talked to and other lawyers. Um, it's just kind of a two-part question, I think. One, was it really how surprising was it to you how poorly designed the legal system is, like, based on sort of the popular impression of the legal system when you entered it, at how inaccessible it is? And I guess the second part is, like, to this day, I find that lawyers are surprised when you sort of explain how poorly designed it is, and, um, do you find this moment, like, the opportunity to sort of help shift hearts and minds around how we think about solving problems for the public more broadly across the profession? I don't know if that's a good way to craft that question, but I think I'm
No,
continually
I get it.
surprised at the the surprise among lawyers when you raise how poorly
Yeah.
designed it all is.
Yeah. I think, first of all, most lawyers are utterly shocked when they enter the legal profession. They're shocked about the type of work they're doing. They're shocked about how different it is from what they're promised in law school or before law school. They're shocked about how the way that lawyers are portrayed in film and TV and books is totally unrealistic. We all think we're going to be Atticus Finches, but we're more like, paper pushers in giant office buildings. And I think
Bartleby.
that, yeah. And yeah, exactly. Scriveners. And we are just, I think there's a bait and switch that's happened for a long time in academia. And this is the moment of reckoning in many ways. This is where it's like, remember all that stuff that you thought you would do and the stuff that you actually do? Well, now even the stuff that you actually do isn't necessary. It can be done by AI much more easily. And sometimes people say, well, you're turning lawyers into robots, or you're telling people who can't afford lawyers, real lawyers, that they're getting robot lawyers. And to that, I say, we're already robots. What are we doing now that's so human? We are looking at our screens, typing emails, doing legal research. We hardly interface with real human beings. Very few lawyers go to court, do trials, do negotiations. Very few lawyers are in the town square debating about public policy or creating legislation or thinking about the way our governments work and the way they should work better. And so, yeah, I think it's a moment of reckoning. But I think most lawyers are probably, if they do some soul searching, they're ready to accept this fact. Like being a lawyer ain't that great right now. And what's the big harm in thinking about freeing yourself from the dry drudgery of legal work and getting back out there into the communities, being a small town lawyer, hanging up a shingle, solving people's everyday problems, and being able to make a living doing that, with the proper tools and technology. That's all possible now. So I'm really excited about that, like framing this as a positive, as a liberating moment for lawyers and not a kind of destruction of the legal profession.
The the double standard, that we in how we sort of evaluate, human lawyering and AI lawyering is, as Jen knows, like, it gets under my skin so often, that and I wanna ask Tom a little bit about the work that you're doing through LawDroid to reduce hallucinations in particular, but the hallucinations that people make that are practicing law and judges make, I mean, as somebody who reviewed judicial decisions for 10 years, I'm here to tell you that judges make mistakes, all the time. And in fact, we have an entire legal system with tiered review because they make mistakes, right? I mean, it's built into this, it's a design spec, of the system. But when an AI hallucinates, we're like, oh, that's it. Can't possibly, do what we lawyers do. But it's a good place to turn to you, Tom. I know you've been building a lot of things through LawDroid, including tools that reduce or eliminate hallucinations. You'll tell me. And this new project, Law Answers AI, which can provide jurisdiction-specific answers to user questions. It feels like a game changer for a broken civil justice market. What project has excited you the most, that you've been working on so far, and what can you tell us about what you're thinking of building in the future?
Yeah, there's a lot. It's kind of like just an open field right now, to really build scalable solutions that could help ordinary Americans, with legal. And it's a moment where this is finally possible in a way that's never been possible before. And so one of the projects I've really enjoyed is one that, I've worked on with Sateesh is Depositron, because it puts into ordinary citizens' hands the ability to use technology as leverage to get what they need. In that case, their deposit back because a landlord is being stingy or difficult and won't give it back. They don't have the right words to ask for it and demand it back. And we give that to them. So that expanding that Law Answers also is a project that I'm excited about where it's the other side of it. When they have all kinds of questions about different legal issues, you know, they try to get a lawyer on the phone, it's busy or it's after hours, they can never get a hold of them. And even if they do, they want to charge them hundreds of dollars. So Law Answers makes that kind of legal information available nationwide, and the answers are really good. I have actually seen a lot of lawyers obviously are going on there and they're asking questions, and it's doing a good job in holding its own. So with LawDroid, I founded it close to 10 years ago, and part of its core mission was to promote justice everywhere. Like Dr. Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so I thought, well, we should promote justice everywhere, and that's what we've been trying to do.
So Tom, your Law Answers AI, you describe it as jurisdiction aware. How do you make that happen for people who are asking questions? How does the AI become jurisdiction aware?
Yeah, so it's strictly enforced. When they ask a question, then it has them define like what state does this question pertain to? And they have a drop down menu so there's no mistakes. They pick California or Washington state or what have you, and then it answers based upon that jurisdiction, and only that. So, unlike if you go to Perplexity, you ask a question, it kind of guesses. It might try to give you an answer according to your IP address, which we know could be kind of scary because maybe, what actually I'm asking about happened in Florida, but it's telling me about Vancouver. Well, that's not going to be helpful. It might be dangerous.
So maybe we could talk about how the two of you connected. You mentioned Depositron, and we'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
We probably met at one of many conferences. If it's Tuesday, we're probably in Cleveland, the saying. And so we saw each other so often, and kind of I developed a respect for Tom and the amount of work that he's able to do just by himself. The podcasts, the Substack, the products that he's launching, the actual legal aid organizations that he's partnering with. So I just felt like he's a guy I should follow. And then I think at a conference at Stanford, Tom said to me, "Do you have any ideas that I can help you with?" And I thought, what a great question. That shows what kind of guy Tom is. That he was thinking about ways to help people and he wanted to collaborate. And so we talked about this idea, which I've had for a long time, about security deposits. And so, in short, in New York City, where I live, about 200,000 people move every year. It's a big city. The average security deposit is $2,500. So I'm not good at math, but I did the math ahead of time on this one. 200,000 times $2,500 is $500 million. So that's the amount of money that landlords take from tenants every year. Now let's give them the benefit of the doubt, which I rarely do as a tenant defense lawyer for so long. Let's say 80% of the time they give the money back or they keep it for good reasons, like there's damage to the tenant's apartment. Well, 20% of the time, they're improperly keeping it. What's 20% of $500 million? This is a $100 million problem for which there's no solutions in New York City. And we also figured that this is a problem that exists in every city, everywhere. Anywhere there's a landlord and a tenant, there's a security deposit, and this is probably a problem. So as Tom mentioned earlier, people right now, they just don't have any way to put into words a demand. They don't know the law and how to cite to it. They don't know how to leverage the penalties within the law. And finally, they don't know that photographs are really good evidence of the condition of an apartment. And if they could just transmit those photos, the landlord might just call it quits and give the money back, knowing the fight ahead is going to be a losing one for them. So that's Depositron. And incredibly, Tom built a prototype in weeks. We were able to test it and launch it within months. And we were able to kind of plant a flag and say, this stuff is possible. You don't need the Ford Foundation to back you. You don't need a giant legal aid nonprofit to host you. You can identify a problem and a need and build something really cheaply and put it out there. And to date, Depositron's helped thousands of people in New York City. And we're really excited, and Tom can talk further about launching Depositron in other cities and states across the country.
Yeah, I'm curious about that, Tom. Are you building it for other cities? Obviously, this is one area where courts probably have specific rules. Like there is jurisdiction specificness needed in a tool like this. And also, I love a little bit more information. That's amazing how many people have already been helped with it in New York. Are you do are I- is that data about how many people have used it and succeeded in getting some relief as a result of that? Is that data you all are publishing and sharing? It feels like the more good news stories like this, the more inspiration, which sounds like is part of your mission, both of you, to you want to inspire others to start building these tools that help regular folks. So tell me a little bit about where we're going with Depositron, Tom.
Absolutely. So one of the things is that with LawDroid, over the past 9 years, I've had the pleasure of working with many different legal aid organizations, courts, and even state bar associations nationwide. Um, and part of the initiative, part of me wanting to work on Depositron with Satish had to do with the fact of not wanting to wait, as you pointed out, for funding or grants or, you know, the stars aligning in a certain way to actually accomplish something that a lot of people need. And that's been, I think, a source of frustration for a lot of people, a lot of legal aid organizations I work with. And it's a break that is on helping people that's unnecessary. So doing this ourselves, just completely self-motivated where you don't have to ask permission, you don't have to wait for, you know, everything to fall into place was really at the core of Depositron and being able to just make it happen. And so we definitely are working to open it up to the nation. In fact, there's been many people that have reached out to both of us on account of Depositron being out there in the world for New York City and New York. And so we'll be launching in Illinois, Florida, California, and that'll just be the start of the expansion. Um, it's something that, you know, beyond the legal, beyond the technical of the AI, what it really does is it gives people a voice and it gives them power that they otherwise wouldn't have.
Tom, how do you get the word out to people who need this kind of help? Um, it sounds like you're doing exactly what people need, which is get the solutions out quickly. And it seems like one of the challenges might be just awareness that there are solutions out there.
It's true. That's the $1,000,000 problem is getting the word out. If you build a better mousetrap, if people don't know about it, they won't use it or won't know to use it. And I can't say that we've, come up with some secret trick that no one else knows about, but we were very fortunate with the launch of Depositron to get a lot of news coverage of it, and that helped to get the word out. And also just people using it. Um, in terms of how many people so far, we've had close to 700 interactions with Depositron so far. Bridget, as far as tracking success, we don't have that in place to track yet. Um, about the long term, longitudinal effective of it, but it's in the works. That's what we want to do. We want to see that we're actually affecting change. Um, and so yeah, we have a great uptick in usage. We've gotten some press coverage. And then when we work with additional state partners, the idea is to bring them in the loop and also have them work as amplifiers of what we're doing.
Yeah, and one of the things that is frustrating about a project like this is those who are against it or those who are not openly supporting it. For example, the courts. Why aren't the courts linking to Depositron in New York City? In small claims court, which is where people go to fight for security deposits, something like between 30 and 40% of the cases are about this issue. So the courts have a huge benefit in keeping these cases out of the courts, right? It's such a drain on the resources. Another organization, another category of groups that is not openly supporting it is legal aids. Why don't they support direct to consumer tools on problems that they can't help resolve anyway. They don't have the capacity because they're wringing their hands about unauthorized practice of law and does it really work and what are we telling people? And oh, there's this little, nuanced, borderline case that the tool doesn't exactly work. So we're just going to reject the whole tool altogether. And then, you have all of the other kind of partners in government, foundations, like people are just, there are so many kind of misconceptions about AI and should AI tools be used and what kind of justice system will this create if we allow these kinds of tools. And so apart from like, even if we had a marketing budget of, millions of dollars, to me, the real challenge is changing the minds of these stakeholders in the space who can say, yeah, use these tools, they work, and they help all of us in this space. They help the people who need the help. They help other providers who can't do this work. They help the courts because they're clogged with court cases about this issue and so on.
Just one last thing I wanted to say was we can work together. Another point of doing this project is the fact that I think another block that a lot of people have is, okay, well, they're a competitor, they're doing this, and they're, Satish and I work at different companies. Like he works at Just Tech. I'm running LawDroid. Sam is has his own company. But those aren't barriers. Like we have a lot of knowledge we could share. And actually the fact that we have that, we could bring it to bear in working on a joint project like this. So a lot of these like mental blocks that people have, you need to get past them for the greater good. And I think this is a great example of, Satish and I working together where normally people might think, oh, they're competitors, but we're not because we're, competing against the world to provide justice.
Love it.
Jen and I do a lot of presenting to different legal audiences, just who are kind of trying to understand what the impact of a general purpose technology, which generative AI is going to have on the practice of law, the business of law, and how disputes are resolved. And so we follow a lot of the data that about how lawyers are using it, the rising numbers of lawyers using it, and I can't remember. I was just working on this slide today for something I'm doing soon. I don't know if it's the data was from Law 360, but the number of lawyers who are optimistic about the value the technology is going to bring to their practices is very, very high among frequent users. So frequent users are really optimistic about what it's going to do. But but among folks who have not used it at all, they're very, very pessimistic about what the possibilities are. So uh, we are familiar with some of the reactions you mentioned. I want to dial in on one of them in particular because the critiques of AI solutions, especially direct to consumer solutions, consumers, most of whom 92% of our neighbors who can't afford lawyers to have help with their civil justice problems. There's a critique that because these tools are imperfect, right? They make mistakes, or they might make mistakes. It's a second tier of justice, and that's settling for permanent kind of inequality. You hear the same critiques about justice workers who are not lawyers. Um, we hear it over and over again, and I sort of feel like as opposed to what, right? I mean, if you're hungry, like, and also, by the way, why are you answering the question? Maybe we should ask the 92% of Americans who don't have, money to shell out for a lawyer, whether they, would like to have another solution that is free. But are you hearing that, from different parts of the profession, and what's your response to that? I'll start with you, Satish, although I bet you both have thoughts.
Yeah, I absolutely hear that all the time. And I hear it from legal aid lawyers. When you talk about Upsolve, for example, and, the appeals court just came down with its decision after so long. And, part of the opposition to Upsolve came from legal aid in New York. And that's so troubling to me because, we have this kind of arrogance about what we do and how special we are and how skilled and perfect we are. None of us are perfect. I'm far from perfect. I make so many mistakes in my work. And I bet there's a lot of things I do all day long that AI could do much more reliably. My Spanish is terrible, for example. you know, if I were to give housing advice to a tenant in New York City in Spanish, that person's going to get evicted. That's certainly something that we need to overcome. The other point I'd make is no ordinary person wakes up in the morning and says, I hope I get to meet a lawyer today. Nobody says that, right? What they do say is, I hope this problem that I have, that I consider to be a life problem, not a legal problem necessarily, I hope there's a solution to it. I hope I find a solution. And maybe that solution involves a lawyer, but gee, I know they're expensive and really hard to get. That's where they're at, right? So lawyers aren't the end point. We like to think we are, right? When we talk about access to justice, we don't say access to lawyers, we say access to justice. And what do we define as justice? Well, it's solutions, right? It's solutions within the framework of our justice system. And that doesn't mean you need a lawyer. People don't care, I think. And that's a real challenge. And so these objections I hear all the time are from arrogance and ignorance and this self importance that I think kind of, we're self selected. Like lawyers are a group of self important people who think they're smarter than everybody, who think they can understand any issue really quickly. And that can be a barrier to solving ordinary problems for everyday people.
I say the same thing to judges. People also don't want judges. Like, no offense, I mean, they don't. They want their problem solved, right? In Richard Susskind's metaphor, they want the hole in the wall. They don't want the drill. They're just paying for the drill to get the hole in the wall. I don't know. Tom, have you
Exactly.
been getting similar feedback? And what's your response to folks?
It's funny, Bridget, you anticipated one of the, examples that I was gonna use, um, because there's 2 guiding lights for me. Like, one is Professor Catmoon, my friend who focuses on clients, right? Like, moving from a lawyer-centric model to a client-centric model because it's about centering the person with the problem, because that's the most important thing that we're trying to solve for, and one of the things I went to law school for too, as Satish did, to help people. And the second is, as you mentioned, Professor Richard Susskind talked about, people they wanna put a picture on the wall so they could see their family and feel that sense of connection and love, right? They don't really care about what hammer they use to get it, to get the nail in the wall. And it's the same way with people, they wanna judge because they need the problem solved and everything else. I definitely hear those voices. I hear them far too often. I try to just drown them out or just, put my headphones in and listen to Radiohead or something instead. Um, because it's not productive. It doesn't help anyone. And it certainly doesn't help the people that need help. And you're right. If you ask them what's the before, I always tell my students, like, look at the before picture and then look at the after picture. Don't just look at the after picture. And the before picture is nothing, no help. I'm my landlord is keeping my money, and what do? Nothing. Pound sand, just move to the next place and try to just pull yourself up from the bootstraps, right? But the after picture is you have some voice, you have some power to demand what is yours. And so I'd rather focus on the solutions.
Yeah. And the, Tom, as you're saying, the client centricity piece, and we've talked about this before, but, I'll always think of my colleague, Mike Avery, who is a, architect and teaches at the School of Design at Penn, and he's one of the people who taught me design thinking, and he came over to the law school and had our students walk around the law school and do a field observation, and he asked them what they thought of all the pictures on the wall, which are all lawyers and judges, and what it evoked to them, and they said it's aspirational, like, "I wanna be one of these people one day," and he said, "To me, it feels very strange that none of these pictures are of the public or the people that you're serving, like, it's all lawyers, and everything is like, from day one, is all about us, so it's sort of unsurprising that all of the responses to these solutions are, like, nobody could ever replace us because it's so deep in the culture from the very start that we are the point of all of this." So, it gives me hope when we talk to students that are excited about this and people like Tom who are teaching students to think in new ways about solutions. And maybe as we get to the end of our time with both of you and you're doing such incredible work, maybe closing and starting with Tom and then going to Sateesh, now that we have this incredible new technology, what would be your moonshot project that you would do if you had unlimited resources and legal AI and access to justice? What problem would you solve, Tom?
Well, I'm working on it now. Thankfully with Satish and also with the Law Answers project, it's about broadening it. It's about scaling it up. It's about, making it available to as many people as possible. Um, and if we look at the line of legal service delivery, at the very beginning, the very top of the funnel is, do I have a legal problem? And what do I do? What does it mean? Right? So that's Law Answers. Then the second step is, okay, I have a legal problem. Um, how do I get help? And then identifying, triaging those issues and then finding the best way to solve it. And then the last part of it is actually the legal service delivery aspect of it. Okay, you need a demand letter. We could actually create that for you and maybe even get it out the door and then maybe even track it and then even help with some pointers for court if you need that. So that entire horizontal is something I think everyone now is vying to solve for. And I think it's a great boon for the ordinary citizen who needs help that we're all going to be out there trying to solve that for them.
Satish, closing thoughts. What would your moonshot project be?
Yeah, this is controversial given where I come from, but I want to make legal aid obsolete. Like we exist because there's a gap. And that gap exists because people have no way to access the laws that are meant to serve them. And so we should work to put ourselves out of business, not to grow bigger and be more bureaucratic and be more opaque. And so I think ideas like law answers, the ability to search for an answer to any type of legal problem from any perspective in any language at any time from your phone, right? How do we liberate access to the law? How do we really democratize the law itself? And if we reach that point, then I'll gladly hang up my shingle or put it away, I guess. I don't know what the analogy is that I'm at right now. And find a new line of work. We don't exist because we should exist. We exist because there's a gap. And I think more of us need to think about that framing and say, why do we exist? How do we put ourselves out of work? And how do we reach people directly where they are? And I think everyone's better off if we reach that point in our world. Everyone is better off. So that's my moonshot is to make this type of work obsolete.
That's exciting, and I'm so glad to have both of you working on that already. And I mean, we asked you a question about a moonshot, but I think you're both engaged in um, trying to get us there, and we're really glad you are. So, and thanks so much for joining us today.
It's been so much fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, this was a fantastic conversation. Thank you both for joining us. And thank you for everybody out there for listening. And we look forward to having you join us on the next conversation on AI and the future of law. And until then, be well.